Korean Mafia. Boss freezes at Maid's ring. The promise he made as a poor orphan. I will marry you. On October 24th, 2004, in Miryang, a small handmade copper ring with a blue glass shard quietly marked the fate of two children who vanished from each other without warning. For years, the ring remained nothing more than a forgotten relic. But 2 decades later, it reappears on the finger of a foreign woman who should have never seen it, triggering a truth that unravels everything a powerful man believes about his past. And when she looks straight at him, as if she has been waiting for this moment since childhood, one question becomes impossible to avoid. Why did she keep that ring for so long? Follow the channel, like this video, and tell us where you are watching from. The penthouse in Miryang sits silent tonight, perched high above the city lights like a fortress of solitude. Baek Ji-seong stands at his mahogany desk, Mont Blanc pen hovering over a contract worth 3 billion won. His signature, sharp, controlled, absolute, has decided fates across the southern provinces for 15 years. Tonight should be no different. But the pen freezes mid-stroke. On the security monitor embedded in his desk, grainy footage flickers from the kitchen camera. A woman moves through the frame. Amara Nkosi, the new housekeeper who arrived from abroad just 3 days ago. She's wiping down the granite countertop with methodical precision, her dark hands moving in careful circles. Nothing unusual, nothing that should make his pulse skip. Then she reaches for the faucet. A glint of blue catches the light. Ji-seong's breath stops completely. His fingers release the pen, and it rolls across the contract, leaving a black slash through his name. He doesn't notice. His eyes are locked on the screen, on her left hand, on the ring that shouldn't exist anywhere in this world except buried in his memory. Copper band, crude construction, a small piece of blue glass embedded in the metal, not a real stone, just colored glass he'd found near the train tracks in Wiseong when he was 9 years old. He'd wrapped wire around it 47 times, because that's how old his mother would have been. He remembers counting each twist in the cold basement of the orphanage, his fingers going numb. That ring, that exact ring, his heart, trained for decades to remain steady through negotiations, confrontations, and moments that would break ordinary men, suddenly pounds against his ribs like it's trying to escape. The sensation is so foreign that for a moment he thinks something medical is happening. But no, this is something far more dangerous than a physical condition. This is the past, reaching through 20 years of carefully constructed walls. Ji-seong leans closer to the screen, his face now inches from the monitor. The blue glass catches the kitchen light again as Amara rinses a dish. The wear pattern on the copper is exactly as he remembers, slightly flattened on the left side where the wire had been wrapped too tight. He'd tried to fix it 3 times but never managed to make it symmetrical, a symmetry that haunted him for months until he finally gave up. His breathing becomes shallow, rapid. The boy he spent 2 decades burying, the orphan with dirt under his fingernails and hope still flickering in his chest, claws his way to the surface without permission. Ji-seong's hand trembles as he reaches toward the screen, fingertips touching cold glass where her image stands. No, he whispers to the empty room. His voice sounds strange, almost unfamiliar. When was the last time he'd spoken with such raw uncertainty? The logical part of his brain attempts to assert control. Coincidence. Impossible coincidence. Someone found it, bought it at a second-hand shop. There are explanations, rational explanations. But the boy inside him knows better. He'd made only one, given it to only one person. In the winter of 2004, on the last day he saw her before the social services separated them to different facilities. She'd been crying, not the loud kind of crying, but the silent kind that shook her whole small body. He'd pressed the ring into her palm and closed her fingers around it. "Promise me you'll keep this," he'd said, his own voice breaking. "Even when you forget my face, even when you grow up and leave this place. Promise me." She'd nodded, unable to speak through her tears. And then they'd torn her away from him, her fingers still clutching that ring, her voice finally breaking through. "I promise. Ji-seong, I promise." 20 years. 20 years of convincing himself she'd lost it, sold it, thrown it away when the memory became too painful. 20 years of building an empire on the foundation of forgetting. But there it is, on the hand of a woman who just appeared in his life 3 days ago. A woman whose resume said she'd spent the last decade abroad. A woman whose eyes he hasn't allowed himself to look into directly, because something about them makes his chest feel hollow. On the screen, Amara finishes with the dishes. She dries her hands on a towel, methodical and calm. Then she does something that makes Ji-Xiong's entire world tilt. She looks directly at the camera, not past it, not through it, at him. Her eyes find the lens with such precision that it can't be accidental. For exactly 1 second, Ji-Xiong will replay this footage 17 times later and count. She holds his invisible gaze through the screen. And then she smiles. Not a polite smile. Not a professional smile. The smile is gentle, knowing, achingly familiar. It carries the weight of winter nights in Wiseong, of shared bread stolen from the kitchen, of 2 children huddled under one thin blanket, whispering promises about a future that seemed impossible. It's the smile she used to give him when she wanted him to know everything would somehow be okay, even when they both knew it wouldn't be. Ji-Xiong's legs give out. He catches himself against the desk, knocking over a glass of whiskey. The amber liquid spreads across his unsigned contract, bleeding through the paper, ruining weeks of negotiation. He doesn't care, can't care, because the woman on the screen, Amara Nkosi, foreign housekeeper, complete stranger, just smiled at him with the exact expression of a girl named Yun Woo, who vanished from his life when they were both children too young to understand that some separations are forever. His hand fumbles for his phone. He needs to call Do Jin, needs to run a background check immediately, needs to know everything about this woman who's carrying his past on her finger. But he can't move, can't think. Can't do anything except watch as Amara turns away from the camera, the blue glass catching the light one more time, and walks calmly out of the kitchen like she hasn't just detonated the entire foundation of Baek Ji-Seong's carefully controlled existence. In the silence of his penthouse, the most powerful man in Miryang sits in spilled whiskey and ruined contracts, feeling like a 9-year-old boy again, helpless, terrified, and desperately hoping for something he doesn't have the courage to name. The next morning arrives with deceptive normalcy. Sunlight filters through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ji-Seong's penthouse, casting geometric shadows across Italian marble floors. Outside, Miryang wakes up to another Tuesday. Traffic building on Samnangjin Road, the morning fish market in full chaos, elderly women gathering at Yeongnamnu Pavilion for their daily exercises. Inside, Baek Ji-Seong hasn't slept. He sits in his leather chair, the same position he occupied 7 hours ago, watching security footage on a loop. The smile, that knowing smile. He's analyzed it frame by frame, searching for any indication of mockery, manipulation, or threat. But there's nothing calculated in her expression. Only recognition, only memory. The realization terrifies him more than any business rival ever has. At 6:30, he hears movement in the kitchen. His pulse immediately accelerates, a response his body has developed overnight, apparently, without his permission. He switches the monitor to live feed, watching as Amara begins her morning routine. She moves with quiet efficiency, preparing breakfast he didn't request. Toast, scrambled eggs, a small bowl of kimchi. She sets everything on the breakfast bar, then pauses. Her hand rests on the counter for just a moment. The ring catches the morning light. Ji-Xiong makes a decision that will unravel everything. He needs to test the theory clawing at his mind, needs to know if the impossible is actually true. So he begins a game he's never played before, one without rules he can control, one where his opponent might not even know they're playing. First move, the blue glass. During his morning inspection of the house, a routine he established years ago to maintain the illusion of normalcy, he places a shard of blue glass on the hallway table, not obviously, just visible enough that someone looking for it would notice. The glass came from a bottle of chamisul soju he broke last night in a moment of frustration, but the color is close enough to what he remembers from the train tracks in Wiseong. He watches from his office as Amara walks past the table at 8:15, carrying fresh linens. Her stride doesn't break, but her eyes flick toward the glass for a fraction of a second. Her breath catches. He sees her shoulders rise and hold. She doesn't stop, doesn't pick it up, just keeps walking. But the hesitation was there. Second move, the melody. At 9:30, Ji-Seong opens his office door slightly and plays a recording on his phone. Spring Day by BTS, but not the popular version. He's found an acoustic cover that sounds tinny and distant, like it's coming from an old radio. In the orphanage in Wiseong, There had been one radio in the common room. It only picked up 2 stations, and on Thursday nights they could sometimes catch a music program from Daegu. He'd learned to recognize songs by their opening notes, because Yoonwoo would always grab his hand when her favorites played. The melody drifts through the penthouse. Ji-Seong pretends to work on his laptop, but his real attention is fixed on the security feed showing the hallway outside his office. At 9:33, Amara walks past, carrying cleaning supplies. She stops. For exactly 4 seconds, he counts. She stands completely still. Her eyes close. Her free hand rises slowly to her chest, fingers pressing against her sternum like she's trying to hold something inside. Her lips move, forming words he can't hear, but the shape looks like Thursday nights. Then she continues walking, her expression carefully neutral. But Ji-Seong saw everything, and now his hands are shaking. Third move, the photograph. This one is reckless, dangerous, but he's already crossed lines he swore he'd never approach. So what's one more? From the locked drawer in his bedroom, the one containing documents and objects he's never shared with anyone, he retrieves a photograph. It's small, crumpled, faded to sepia tones. The photographer had been a volunteer at the orphanage who thought giving the children pictures would help them feel valued. Instead, it had just made the absence more painful. In the photo, 2 children sit on concrete steps. A boy with too long hair and suspicious eyes. A girl with her head resting on his shoulder, smiling despite everything. The image quality is terrible. The subject's slightly out of focus, but their hands are visible, clasped together between them. Ji-Seong places the photograph face up in the second-floor corridor, on the narrow table beneath the window. The location is deliberate. It's part of Amara's afternoon cleaning route, but isolated enough that she'll be alone when she finds it. He waits in the study, door cracked open, security monitor active. At 2:15, Amara appears in the corridor. She's humming something. He can't make out the tune, but the rhythm is familiar. She approaches the table with a microfiber cloth, ready to dust. Then she sees the photograph. The cloth falls from her hand. She goes rigid, completely motionless, staring at the image like it's a ghost materialized on polished wood. Her breathing becomes visible, chest rising and falling rapidly. One hand reaches toward the photograph, fingers trembling, but stops centimeters away. She doesn't touch it, just hovers there, frozen in the moment between past and present. A sound escapes her throat, soft, broken, almost inaudible, but the security feed captures it. She's crying, not with her face, which remains eerily composed, but her shoulders shake with the effort of containing something too large for her body. Tears fall silently onto the table, darkening the wood beside the photograph. Ji-Seong feels his own chest constrict. He wants to go to her, wants to stop this cruel experiment. But he can't move, can't breathe, can't do anything except watch as this woman, this stranger who might not be a stranger at all, breaks apart in his hallway over a picture of 2 children who don't exist anymore. After 93 seconds, Amara wipes her face with her sleeve. She picks up the cloth. Carefully, deliberately, she dusts around the photograph, leaving it exactly where it lies. Then she walks away, her posture straight, her pace measured, professional, controlled, unaffected. But Ji-Seong saw the truth. That night, he doesn't leave his office. He sits in darkness, watching the security feed of the empty corridor where the photograph still rests. At 11:47, a figure appears. Amara. She walks directly to the table, and this time she picks up the photograph. She studies it for a long moment, her face unreadable in the dim hallway light. Then she does something that makes Ji-Seong's heart stop completely. She turns the photograph face down on the table, but before she does, she touches the image. One finger, placed precisely over the boy's face in the picture. The pressure of her touch leaves a small smudge on the old paper, visible even through the security camera. A mark, a claim, a message. She walks away without looking back. Ji-Seong sits frozen until dawn, staring at the overturned photograph on the monitor. The test results are conclusive, undeniable, impossible. The woman in his house is Yoonwoo, and she knows exactly who he is. 3 days pass in excruciating suspension. Ji-Seong conducts business meetings, signs documents, makes decisions that affect hundreds of employees across his network of enterprises. But inside, he's unraveling thread by thread. Every time Amara passes through a room, his concentration fractures. Every glimpse of that blue glass ring sends tremors through the foundation he's built. He can't continue like this. Can't maintain the pretense of normalcy when his past is folding laundry in the next room and preparing meals he barely touches. The uncertainty is more unbearable than any truth could be. On Friday evening, as purple twilight settles over Miryang, Ji-seong makes the decision that will change everything. He picks up his phone and sends a message to Amara through the household management app. Please come to my office at 8 o'clock. We need to discuss your work arrangements. Professional. Distant. A reasonable request from employer to employee. His hands shake as he sets the phone down. The 2 hours before 8 feel like drowning in slow motion. Ji-seong showers, changes into casual clothes, black turtleneck, dark slacks, then immediately second-guesses the choice. Too informal? Too calculated? He changes back into a button-down shirt, then realizes he's acting like a nervous teenager and forces himself to stop. He settles on the turtleneck. If he's going to confront his past, he won't do it hiding behind business attire. At 7:58, he sits at his desk, hands folded, expression neutral. His heart pounds so hard he's certain it's visible through his chest. Every second stretches into eternity. At exactly 8 o'clock, a soft knock sounds at his door. Come in, he says. His voice sounds remarkably steady. A small victory. The door opens. Amara enters, and for the first time since she arrived, Ji-seong allows himself to truly look at her. Not through security cameras, not in passing glances. Directly, completely. She's changed since childhood, obviously. Taller. Her features have matured, sharpened. But her eyes, those dark, expressive eyes that used to watch him with such absolute trust, remain unchanged. They carry the same depth, the same quiet observation, the same ability to see through every wall he constructs. You asked to see me, Mr. Beck? She speaks with perfect formality, hands clasped in front of her. The only indication of anything unusual is her left thumb, rubbing circles against the copper ring, an unconscious gesture, one he recognizes from 20 years ago when she used to do the same thing with a button on her orphanage uniform during moments of stress. Sit down, please. He gestures to the chair across from his desk. She sits with careful posture, back straight, ankles crossed, waiting. Her face reveals nothing. The silence between them feels like a living thing, heavy, breathing, demanding acknowledgement. Ji-seong has negotiated with corporate executives, government officials, people who make their living from deception and manipulation. He's never felt more exposed than he does right now, sitting across from a woman who once knew him when he was nothing. I need to ask you about something, he begins, then stops. The corporate language feels obscene in this moment. He tries again. Your ring, the one you wear. Where did you get it? Amara's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in her eyes. Recognition that they've arrived at the moment both of them have been avoiding. It was a gift, she says simply, from someone very important to me. A long time ago. How long? 20 years. The confirmation lands like a physical blow. Ji-seong's breath catches. He forces himself to maintain composure, to not let his face betray the chaos erupting inside him. That's a very long time to keep something so modest. He chooses the word carefully. The copper is worn. The glass is cracked on one side. Most people would have replaced it with something more valuable by now. Most people don't understand that value isn't measured in money, Mr. Beck. The way she says his name, formal, distant, but with an undertone of something else, makes his chest tighten. He stands, unable to remain seated any longer, moves to the window overlooking the city. Miryang spreads out below them, thousands of lights marking thousands of lives that have nothing to do with this impossible moment. May I see it? He asks without turning around. The ring, more closely. A pause. Then, of course. He turns. Amara has stood as well, extending her left hand across the desk. The ring catches the office lighting, that blue glass glowing with the same cheap beauty he remembers. Ji-seong approaches slowly, each step feeling like crossing a chasm. When he reaches the desk, he's close enough to see the details he couldn't make out on security cameras. The wire wrapping is exactly as he remembers. 47 loops, slightly uneven, the end tucked under so it wouldn't scratch her skin. The blue glass has developed a small crack on the right side, probably from decades of wear. His fingers hover over the ring. He wants to touch it, Wants to confirm it's real, not some elaborate trick of memory and desperation. The person who made this, Amara says softly, tried very hard to make it perfect. He wrapped the wire 47 times. I counted once. I always wondered why that specific number. Ji-seong's throat constricts. His mother's age. The age she would have been. I see. Her voice remains steady, but there's a subtle tremor now. You know a lot about this ring, Mr. Beck. He looks up, meeting her eyes directly for the first time since she entered the room. The impact nearly destroys his composure, because there, in her gaze, he sees everything. The past, the recognition, the questions, the hurt, all of it, laid bare between them. I should, he whispers. I made it. The confession hangs in the air. Amara's expression finally cracks, not dramatically, but like glass developing fault lines. Her lips part slightly. Her breathing becomes visible, but she doesn't pull her hand away. Then you know, she says quietly, why I can't let anyone else touch it. Ji-seong reaches for the ring anyway. His fingers are centimeters from the copper band when Amara's hand withdraws sharply. Instinctively, she steps back from the desk, cradling her left hand against her chest, like he's just threatened something sacred. The rejection is a knife between his ribs. I'm sorry, she says, and her voice finally breaks on the words. I'm sorry, but you're the last person who should put his hands on this. You lost that right 20 years ago when you never came back. Then she turns and walks out of his office, leaving Ji-seong standing alone beside his desk, hand still extended toward empty air, finally understanding the full weight of promises broken and years stolen. The door closes with a soft click that sounds like the end of everything. The weekend descends on Miryang with unseasonable cold. Frost patterns spread across Ji-seong's penthouse windows like crystallized memories, and he finds himself unable to escape the past that's now living under his roof. He doesn't see Amara, Yoon-woo, his mind keeps correcting, for the entire Saturday. She's requested the day off through the household app. A message so brief and professional it feels like a slap. He grants it immediately, then spends 16 hours wondering where she goes. Sunday morning brings an unexpected complication in the form of Han Seo Ryan. She arrives unannounced at 10:30, sweeping into his penthouse with the confidence of someone who's known him for 15 years and believes that grants her certain privileges. She's wearing a cream Chanel suit, her hair pulled into an elegant chignon, diamond earrings catching the light with every movement. Everything about her screams old money and careful cultivation. Ji-seong, she says, using the familiar form of his name that always feels presumptuous. You look terrible. When was the last time you slept properly? He's at the breakfast bar, third cup of coffee going cold in his hands, still wearing yesterday's clothes. He hadn't noticed until she pointed it out. What do you want, Seo Ryan? She sets her Hermes bag on the counter and studies him with the calculating gaze of someone who's made a career of reading people. Han Seo Ryan runs 3 of the most successful luxury hotels in southern Korea. She's brilliant, ruthless, and has been angling for something more than friendship with Ji-seong since they first met at a business conference in Busan. The charity gala, she says, next Saturday at the Miryang Arts Center. You confirmed months ago, but your assistant says you haven't chosen your +1 yet. I'm volunteering. I'm going alone. You never go alone. She moves closer, and he catches the scent of her perfume, expensive, floral, suffocating. People talk when you go alone. They say you're unstable, distracted. Is that the image you want? Before Ji-seong can respond, footsteps sound from the hallway. Amara appears, returning from her day off. She's wearing casual clothes, jeans, a simple sweater, and carrying a small bag from the Miryang traditional market. She stops when she sees Seo Ryan, and something shifts in the air. Seo Ryan's expression transforms instantly. The polished smile remains, but her eyes go cold and assessing. Oh, she says, drawing out the syllable. I didn't realize you had staff here on weekends. The pause before staff is deliberate, calculated to demean. Ms. Nkosi lives here, Ji-seong says, his voice harder than intended. This is her home. Amara's eyes flick to him briefly, surprised maybe by the defense, but she maintains her professional demeanor. I apologize for interrupting. I'll just put these groceries away. No need to apologize, Seo Ryan says, still smiling that razor-sharp smile. Though I'm curious, that's an unusual accent. Where are you from originally? Does it matter? Amara's tone remains polite. but there's steel underneath. Just making conversation. Jixiang and I are old friends. I like to know who's in his personal space. The territorial claim couldn't be clearer. Jixiang sees Amara's jaw tighten fractionally, the only sign that the comment landed. I understand, Amara says quietly. If you'll excuse me. She moves toward the kitchen, but Seo Ryan's next words stop her. That's a very interesting ring you're wearing. Quite rustic. Family heirloom? Jixiang goes rigid. Amara's hand instinctively curls, hiding the copper band. Something like that, she says. Seo Ryan tilts her head, studying Amara with renewed interest. I only ask because Jixiang has always appreciated finer things. Quality, refinement. It's interesting to see something so modest in his home. The insult is wrapped in silk, but it's an insult nonetheless. Jixiang opens his mouth to intervene, but Amara speaks first. The most valuable things, she says softly, are rarely the ones that cost the most. But I suppose that's a lesson some people never learn, no matter how expensive their education. Seo Ryan's smile freezes. For a moment, tension crackles between the two women like electricity before a storm. Then Amara walks calmly into the kitchen, leaving Seo Ryan standing in stunned silence. I like her, Seo Ryan finally says, though her tone suggests the opposite. Very spirited. Where did you find her? Through an agency. Jixiang's answer is clipped. Was there anything else? But Seo Ryan isn't finished. She moves to the breakfast bar, her fingers trailing across the marble. You've been different lately. Distracted. People are noticing. There are whispers that you're losing your edge. What people? Does it matter? Perception is reality in our world, Jixiang. You know that. She pauses. And now I understand why you've been off. You're worried about your help. How unexpectedly soft of you. The accusation stings because it's partially true, but not in the way she thinks. I'll see you at the gala, he says, a clear dismissal. Seo Ryan studies him for a long moment, then collects her bag. I'll coordinate with your assistant about timing. And Jixiang, whatever is happening here. She gestures vaguely toward the kitchen. Be careful. People in our position can't afford complications. After she leaves, Jixiang stands alone in the sudden silence. From the kitchen, he hears the quiet sounds of Amara putting away groceries. Normal. Domestic. Completely at odds with the chaos brewing inside him. His phone buzzes. A message from Chun Do-jin, his right hand for the past decade. Need to talk. It's about the new housekeeper. Found something interesting in her background check. Jixiang's stomach drops. He'd run a standard background check when she was hired, but now Do-jin has clearly dug deeper. What has he found? What secrets is Yunwoo carrying beyond the obvious one? Before he can respond, another sound draws his attention. From his bedroom, he hears something fall. He moves quickly, pushing open the door to find Amara standing frozen near his dresser. On the floor between them lies a small object, the ID badge from Wiseong Orphanage, the one she'd placed on his desk days ago. She must have been returning it, but now she's staring at something else, something she found while placing the badge back. On his dresser, partially hidden behind a photo frame, sits a worn envelope, his name written in a child's handwriting on the outside. Inside, a letter he's never been able to throw away, a letter from Yunwoo, written the day before they were separated, the day she promised to wait for him, the day he promised to come back, promises that dissolved like sugar in rain. You kept it, she whispers, and her voice breaks completely on those 3 words. Jixiang can't speak, can't move, can only watch as tears spill down her face. Tears she's held back for days, maybe years. You kept my letter, she says again, picking up the envelope with trembling hands. All this time. You kept it, but you never... She can't finish. The sentence hangs incomplete between them, heavy with 20 years of waiting and wondering, and finally, devastatingly, understanding. Understanding that he remembered, that he kept the evidence of their connection. But that memory and action are entirely different things. That he chose to build an empire instead of keeping a promise to a girl who had nothing but hope. The Miryang Arts Center glitters like a jewel box on Saturday evening, its modern architecture illuminated by carefully positioned lights that make the building glow against the night sky. Luxury vehicles line the curved driveway, Mercedes sedans, BMW coupes, the occasional Bentley. South Korea's elite have gathered for the annual charity gala, an event that raises millions for local causes, while serving as a stage for power plays and social maneuvering. Ji-seong arrives alone despite Seo Ryan's persistent messages. He's wearing a tailored Tom Ford suit, black silk tie, diamond cufflinks that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He looks every inch the powerful businessman. But inside, he feels like he's walking into an execution. The week since Amara found his letter has been unbearable. They've moved around each other like ghosts, speaking only when necessary, the air between them heavy with everything unsaid. She's submitted a formal resignation, effective in 2 weeks. He's accepted it through the household app, unable to face her directly to argue. Now, as he enters the grand ballroom with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers, he scans the crowd out of habit. Business associates, government officials, old family friends, and there, near the catering station, he spots members of the event staff in simple black uniforms. Among them, Amara. His heart stops. She's not supposed to be here. She didn't mention working this event. But there she is, arranging champagne flutes on a tray with the same careful precision she brings to everything. She's pulled her hair back, making her face more visible. The copper ring catches the chandelier light as her hands move. Ji-seong-ah. Seo Ryan materializes beside him, linking her arm through his before he can react. She's stunning in a red evening gown, her presence commanding immediate attention. Finally, I was beginning to think you'd stand me up. I told you I was coming alone. And yet, here I am. She guides him deeper into the ballroom, her grip on his arm possessive. The mayor's been asking about you, and the Kim family wants to discuss the Busan expansion. You can't avoid networking forever. For the next hour, Ji-seong endures conversation after conversation. He smiles, shakes hands, makes promises about lunch meetings and investment opportunities, but his attention keeps drifting to the catering staff moving through the crowd. To Amara, specifically. She serves champagne with downcast eyes, practically invisible to the guests who take glasses from her tray without acknowledgement. It's a sharp contrast to the woman who stood in his kitchen and verbally dismantled Seo Ryan. Here, she's made herself small, forgettable, except Ji-seong can't forget her for a single second. At 9 o'clock, the formal program begins. Speeches about community support and charitable giving, a video presentation about local programs. Ji-seong sits at a table near the front, Seo Ryan positioned proprietarily beside him, and tries to focus on anything except the growing knot in his chest. During the break between speeches, Seo Ryan excuses herself to network. The moment she's gone, Ji-seong's eyes find Amara again. She's at the beverage station, refilling her tray, alone. Before he can think better of it, he stands and walks toward her. She senses his approach and goes still, hands frozen over a champagne bottle. They're partially hidden behind a decorative column, the noise of the gala creating a bubble of relative privacy. "You didn't tell me you were working tonight," he says quietly. "You didn't ask." She continues pouring, not looking at him. "The agency needed extra staff. I need the money for my next steps." "Your next steps?" "I'm leaving Miryang, probably going back to Johannesburg. There's nothing keeping me here anymore." The words land like punches. Ji-seong moves closer, lowering his voice. "Yoon-woo, don't." She finally looks at him, and her eyes are fierce. "Don't call me that name. Not here. Not when you're dressed like this, surrounded by these people, playing the role you've chosen. That girl doesn't exist in this world. She exists to me. Does she? Because the man I knew would never have let me serve him champagne at a party while pretending I don't exist." Before Ji-seong can respond, Seo Ryan's voice cuts through the moment like a blade. "So this is where you disappeared to." She approaches with calculated grace, her smile sharp as she takes in the scene. Ji-seong and Amara standing too close, the tension between them obvious to anyone paying attention. "Just getting some champagne," Ji-seong says evenly. "From the help? How charmingly hands-on of you." Seo Ryan's eyes fix on Amara with predatory focus. "Though I suppose we should all be grateful for good service." The dismissive tone makes Ji-seong's jaw clench, but Amara maintains her composure. She picks up her tray, ready to move away. Seo Ryan's next words are carefully loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "That ring you're wearing is quite distracting. Perhaps something more appropriate for serving guests?" We wouldn't want anyone thinking the staff is wearing costume jewelry from the Lost and Found. Several heads turn. Conversations pause. The kind of public attention that can destroy someone's dignity in seconds. Amara's face remains neutral, but Ji-seong sees her hand tremble slightly, sees the flash of humiliation in her eyes before she buries it. Of course, Amara says quietly. I apologize for the distraction. She starts to slide the ring off her finger, and Ji-seong breaks. Don't. His voice carries more force than intended, drawing more attention. He steps between Amara and Seo Ryan, his body language protective in a way that can't be misinterpreted. The ring stays. Seo Ryan's smile falters. Ji-seong, I was just making someone feel small for your own entertainment. He turns to face her fully, and several nearby guests are now openly watching. That ring has more value than anything in this room, and Ms. Nikosi's presence here, in any capacity, is worth more respect than you're showing. The ballroom has gone noticeably quieter. This is the kind of moment that will fuel gossip for weeks. Baek Ji-seong, defending his housekeeper, publicly confronting Han Seo Ryan. The social implications are enormous. Seo Ryan's face flushes. You're making a scene over nothing. No, you tried to make someone feel worthless over nothing. There's a difference. He turns back to Amara, whose eyes are wide with shock. Without thinking about the dozens of people watching, without considering the consequences, Ji-seong reaches out. His fingers brush against hers. The first time he's touched her since she returned to his life. The contact sends electricity through his entire body. Gently, he takes her left hand and examines the ring, the worn copper, the cracked blue glass, the 47-wire loops. Then, with deliberate care, he pushes the ring back onto her finger. The gesture is intimate, unmistakable. It speaks volumes that words never could. This ring, he says, his voice steady but thick with emotion, represents a promise, one that I failed to keep. But its value doesn't diminish because I was too much of a coward to honor it. The ballroom is completely silent now. Amara stares at him, tears welling in her eyes. Seo Ryan makes a sound of disgust and stalks away. Several guests follow, scandalized whispers already beginning. But Ji-seong doesn't care. For the first time in 20 years, he's chosen truth over image. He releases Amara's hand and steps back, the spell breaking. I'm sorry, he whispers, for all of it. Then he turns and walks out of the gala, leaving behind his reputation, his careful social standing, and 300 shocked witnesses. Behind him, Amara stands frozen, staring at the ring on her finger, champagne tray forgotten at her feet. Ji-seong doesn't go home. He drives aimlessly through Miryang's empty streets, the city lights blurring past his windows like memories he can't quite grasp. His phone erupts with notifications, calls from Dojin, messages from business associates, even a terse text from his attorney asking if he needs damage control. He ignores all of it. What he did tonight will cost him. Socially. Professionally. The gossip networks in South Korea's elite circles work faster than any news service. By morning, everyone will know that Baek Ji-seong publicly defended his housekeeper, touched her with unmistakable intimacy, and walked out on the most important social event of the season. The implications will be dissected endlessly. His business relationships will shift. Some will see weakness. Others will see scandal. All will see a crack in the armor of the man who spent 15 years projecting absolute control. And yet, driving through the cold November night, Ji-seong feels something unexpected. Relief. He ends up at Yongnam-nu Pavilion, the historic structure overlooking the Miryang River. It's deserted at this hour. Just ancient wooden beams and stone foundations that have witnessed centuries of human drama. He sits on the cold steps, still wearing his expensive suit, and stares at the dark water below. His phone rings. Dojin. He answers this time. Where are you? Dojin's voice is tight with concern. The internet is exploding. There are already 3 articles about what happened at the gala. Photos, video clips. Ji-seong, what were you thinking? I wasn't. Clearly. Han Seo Ryan is telling people you've had some kind of breakdown. She's spinning this as a mental health crisis brought on by overwork. Let her. A pause. You're not worried about the damage to your reputation. I'm tired, Dojin. Ji-seong's voice sounds hollow even to himself. I'm tired of pretending. Tired of performing. tired of being someone I built out of fear and ambition instead of anything real. This is about the housekeeper. Her name is Amara, or Yunwoo. She was the first person who ever saw me as someone worth caring about, back when I was nothing, and I spent 20 years becoming everything except the person she believed I could be. Dojin is quiet for a long moment. The background check I ran. The thing I wanted to tell you about. She's been looking for you for years, ever since she aged out of the system. She hired investigators, checked records, followed leads. She spent a decade searching. Jishung's chest constricts. And when she found me, she took a job as a housekeeper, not to expose you, not to demand anything, just to be near you, I think, to see if the boy she remembered still existed somewhere inside the man you became. The words break something fundamental inside Jishung. All this time, he'd been afraid of what she wanted from him, afraid she'd come to collect on old promises, to leverage their shared past, to complicate his carefully ordered life. But she'd come only to see if he was worth remembering. And what had she found? A man who built walls instead of bridges, who accumulated power instead of keeping promises, who tested her with cruel games instead of simply being honest. His phone buzzes with an incoming text. Unknown number. He opens it. I quit. Effective immediately. I'll collect my things tomorrow when you're at the office. Thank you for your kindness in hiring me. I hope you find peace with your choices. And the formal tone, the careful distance, the finality of it all. It feels like a door closing on something that was barely opened. Jishung stands abruptly. He needs to go back. Needs to stop her before she disappears again. But his phone rings before he can move. This time from the penthouse security system. Motion detected. Someone in the building. He pulls up the security feed on his phone, and his breath catches. Amara is in his penthouse. She's moving through the space quickly, efficiently, gathering her belongings. She's changed out of the catering uniform into jeans and a sweater. Her movements are hurried but not panicked, determined. She's really leaving. Jishung runs to his car. The drive from Yeongnam-nu Pavilion to his building takes 12 minutes. He pushes it to 8, running 2 red lights, his heart pounding with the terror of being too late. He takes the elevator up, watching the security feed on his phone the entire time. She's almost finished packing. A single suitcase and a backpack. Everything she owns fitting into 2 bags. The image is devastating in its simplicity. The elevator doors open. He rushes into the penthouse. She's standing by the door, bags in hand, coat already on. They freeze when they see each other, separated by 20 feet of imported marble that might as well be an ocean. Don't go, he says. The words come out raw, stripped of any pretense. I have to. Why? Because I came here looking for someone who doesn't exist anymore. Her voice is steady but sad. I wanted to find the boy who made me a ring out of copper wire and glass, who shared his bread even when he was hungry, who promised he'd come back for me. I'm still... You're not. She cuts him off gently. You're Baek Ji-seong. Successful, powerful, important. You're everything that boy dreamed of becoming. But he's gone, and I can't keep holding on to a memory while standing in front of the reality. Ji-seong moves closer, desperate. I kept your letter. I kept the photograph. I never forgot. Remembering isn't the same as being present. Tears stream down her face now, but her voice doesn't waver. You remembered me while building a life that had no room for me in it. That's not love, Jishung. That's guilt. The accusation lands with devastating accuracy. Because she's right. He'd kept the tokens of their connection while ensuring their actual connection remained safely in the past. What happened tonight at the gala? He starts. Was you finally acknowledging what we both know? That we're from 2 different worlds now. That the people in your life will always see me as the help. As someone inappropriate. As a complication. I don't care what they think. Yes, you do. And you should. Because that's the life you chose. That's the person you became. And I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just tired of hoping you'd choose differently. She adjusts her bags, preparing to leave. Ji-seong's mind races, searching for words that could change this, that could fix what 20 years broke. The ring, he says desperately. You're still wearing it. Amara looks down at her hand. The copper band catches the light one more time. Then, with slow deliberation, she slides it off her finger. She crosses the space between them and places the ring in his palm, closing his fingers around it. Keep it, she whispers. Remember the boy you were, the The one who thought love was more important than anything else. Maybe someday you'll find him again. Then she walks past him, out the door, toward the elevator. Ji-seong stands frozen, the ring burning in his palm like a coal. He watches her press the elevator button, watches the doors open, watches her step inside. Their eyes meet one last time as the doors begin to close. "I never stopped loving you," he says. "I know," she replies. "That's what makes this so sad." The doors close. She's gone. And Ji-seong collapses against the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor, the ring clutched in his fist, finally understanding what he's lost. Ji-seong doesn't move from the floor for hours. He sits against the wall of his penthouse, expensive suit crumpled, tie loosened, the copper ring clutched so tightly in his fist that it leaves an imprint in his palm. Outside, dawn begins to break over Miryang, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale gold that he doesn't see. His phone vibrates constantly beside him. Messages, calls, emails, the world demanding his attention, his decisions, his presence. He ignores all of it. For the first time in 15 years, Baek Ji-seong has no interest in being who everyone needs him to be. At 7 in the morning, Do-jin uses his emergency key to enter the penthouse. He finds Ji-seong exactly where he collapsed, staring at nothing. "You look like hell," Do-jin says, then pauses when he sees Ji-seong's expression. "What happened?" "She left." The words feel like confessing to a crime. "She gave me back the ring and left." Do-jin sits down on the floor beside him. An odd sight. 2 men in expensive clothes sitting on imported marble like teenagers after a party. He doesn't ask questions, just sits there, present, waiting. Finally, Ji-seong speaks. "There was a letter," he says quietly. "From Yoonwoo, from when we were kids. I found it this morning in my desk. It must have fallen out when she returned the orphanage badge." He pulls a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. The paper is yellowed, creased from being unfolded and refolded countless times over 20 years. He hands it to Do-jin. Do-jin reads it silently. The handwriting is childish, some characters uneven, but the message is devastatingly clear. "Ji-seong oppa, they say you're leaving tomorrow for a new placement in Seoul. They say it's a good opportunity, that you'll have better chances there. I'm happy for you. Really, I am. But I'm also scared you'll forget me. Everyone forgets eventually. That's what happens when people leave this place. So I want to tell you something important. You don't have to come back for me. I know you promised, but promises are hard to keep when life gets bigger. I understand that now. But please remember that once, there was a girl who thought you were the bravest person in the world, who felt safe when you held her hand during storms, who believed that good things could happen because you said they would. Even if you forget my face, please remember that you were loved, completely, by someone who had nothing else to give but that. I'll keep your ring forever, even if you don't come back, especially if you don't come back, because it will remind me that once, someone cared enough to make something beautiful just for me. Be happy, Appa. That's all I want. Your Yoonwoo." Do-jin folds the letter carefully and hands it back. "She released you from the promise before you even left." "I know." Ji-seong's voice cracks. "She gave me permission to forget, permission to build a life without guilt. And I took it. I took it and never looked back because it was easier than facing what I'd left behind. You were 16, old enough to know what promises meant, old enough to understand that some things matter more than opportunities." He stands abruptly, pacing. "I told myself I'd go back when I was established, when I had something to offer her, when I could give her a better life than the one we had. But you never did, because there was always another goal, another milestone, another excuse. And with each year that passed, going back became harder. How do you face someone after 1 year of silence? 2, 5, 10? He laughs bitterly. By year 15, it felt impossible. So I convinced myself she'd moved on, that she'd forgotten, that the promise didn't matter anymore. But she never forgot. No, she spent a decade searching for me, and when she found me, she didn't demand anything, didn't accuse me, just took a job cleaning my house so she could see if the person she remembered still existed." Ji-seong stops pacing, facing Do-jin. "And you know what she found? A coward. Someone who kept tokens of the past while making sure the past stayed buried." Do-jin stands as well. "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. She's right about everything. I'm not the person she loved. I'm not even sure I like the person I became, then change. It's not that simple, isn't it? Dojin's voice is harder now. You've spent 15 years building this version of yourself. You can spend the next 15 becoming someone else. Someone who actually deserves her. The words hit Ji-seong like a physical blow, because Dojin is right. Change isn't impossible, just difficult. And Ji-seong has never been afraid of difficult things, only of emotional things, only of vulnerability. His phone buzzes again. This time he looks at it. A message from an unknown number, but he knows immediately who it's from. The message contains only an address. Seolmejai Pension, Unit 7, Miryang. His heart stops. She's still in Miryang. Dojin reads the address over his shoulder. What are you waiting for? Ji-seong doesn't answer. He's already moving toward the door. The drive to Seolmejai takes 20 minutes. It's a modest pension on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that rents by the week to people in transition. The building is old but clean, surrounded by pine trees that filter the morning light into golden streams. Unit 7 is on the second floor. Ji-seong stands outside the door for a full minute, heart pounding, before he finally knocks. Amara opens the door. She's wearing the same clothes from last night, her eyes red from crying. They stare at each other in silence. You came, she finally says. You sent me the address. I wasn't sure you'd use it. She steps aside, letting him in. The room is small. A single bed, a table, a window overlooking the pine trees. Her suitcase sits unpacked in the corner. On the table, a laptop displaying flight options to Johannesburg. I read your letter, Ji-seong says. The one from 20 years ago. It fell out when you returned the badge. Amara's hand goes to her mouth. I'd forgotten I wrote that. You told me I didn't have to come back, that you understood if I moved on. I was trying to make it easier for you. It didn't. He moves closer, the copper ring still in his palm. It made it easier to lie to myself, to pretend that forgetting was the same as being released from obligation. But you never released me, Eunwoo. I just stopped trying to honor what we had. Tears stream down her face. Why are you here, Ji-seong? Because you asked me a question last night, and I didn't answer it honestly. He takes a breath. You said I never came back for you, that I ran. You were right. I didn't run from the orphanage or from poverty or from that life. I ran from the promise I made because keeping it would have meant staying vulnerable, staying the person who could be hurt. And now? Now I'm tired of running. He opens his palm, showing her the ring. This shouldn't be in my hand. It should be on yours, where it belongs, where it's always belonged. Amara looks at the ring, then at him. You can't just fix 20 years with a gesture, Ji-seong. I know, but maybe, his voice breaks, maybe I can start trying to become someone worthy of the promise I made. Not the boy you remember, not the man I became. Someone new, someone honest. She reaches out slowly, taking the ring from his palm, but she doesn't put it on, just holds it between them. I'm not the same person either, she says softly. That girl who wrote that letter, she was preparing to be forgotten, teaching herself to be okay with abandonment. I built a life on that lesson, taught myself not to need anyone. So where does that leave us? I don't know. She meets his eyes, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to know right now. They don't solve everything that morning in the small pension room. There are no grand declarations, no dramatic reconciliations, no promises that stretch toward forever. Instead, they sit at the small table by the window, drinking instant coffee that tastes bitter and cheap, and they talk, really talk, for the first time in 20 years. Amara tells him about the years after their separation, about being moved to a facility in Gwangju, about aging out of the system at 18 with nothing but a backpack and the copper ring, about working 3 jobs to save money for university, about the Korean family who sponsored her education when they saw her potential, about eventually moving to South Africa for work opportunities. I told myself I was moving on, she says, watching steam rise from her coffee, that I was building a life that had nothing to do with the past. But every time I made a decision, where to live, what to study, who to trust, I was measuring it against a memory of a boy who once made me feel safe. Ji-seong listens without interrupting, learning about the decades he missed, learning about the woman she became in his absence. Then it's his turn. He tells her about the foster family in Seoul who took him in. Wealthy, cold, more interested in appearances than connection. About working obsessively through school. About building his first business at 21. about the slow accumulation of power and influence that eventually led to Miryang. I convinced myself that success would make the past hurt less, he admits, that if I became important enough, powerful enough, the memory of being powerless would fade. But it never did. Every achievement just felt like another layer of distance between who I was and who I was supposed to be. Who were you supposed to be? Someone who kept his promises. Someone who valued people over positions. Someone who... He stops, emotion tightening his throat. Someone you could still recognize. Amara reaches across the table, her hand hovering near his. Not touching, just close. I recognized you the moment I saw you on that security footage. Not because you look the same. You don't. But because of the way you held your pen. You were gripping it too tightly, like you were afraid it would slip away. You always held on to things too tightly when you were worried. The observation is so specific, so intimate, that Jishung feels tears prick his eyes. She'd seen him even through a security camera, had recognized the boy inside the man before he'd even noticed her. Why did you really come back? He asks. The truth. She's quiet for a long moment, considering. Because I needed to know if the love I'd carried for 20 years was real, or just a story I'd told myself, a fantasy I'd built to make sense of my loneliness. She looks at him directly, and what I found was that both things can be true. The boy I loved was real, but he's not who you are now. And that's okay. It has to be. Is it? Okay? I don't know yet. She pulls her hand back, wrapping it around her coffee cup. I think I came here hoping for an impossible thing, that we could step back into who we were. That time wouldn't matter. That love could just pick up where it left off. She laughs softly, sadly, but that's not how life works. Ji-seong feels something crumbling inside him. So this is goodbye? I think this is acceptance. She turns the copper ring over in her fingers. Acceptance that we're different people now, that we hurt each other through absence and choice, that some things can't be repaired, only acknowledged. They sit in silence as morning light fills the small room. Outside, pine trees sway in the November wind, their branches creating shadows that dance across the floor. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell rings, the sound carrying across Miryang like a reminder that time continues, regardless of human heartbreak. I don't want to lose you again, Ji-seong says finally, voice raw. You won't, because I was never really lost, just waiting. Amara stands, moving to the window, but waiting isn't the same as being present, and I'm tired of waiting for a past that's already gone. Then what do we do? She turns to face him, and her expression is both heartbroken and strangely peaceful. We start being honest. No more tests, no more games, no more pretending we're anything other than two people who loved each other once and are trying to figure out if there's anything left to build on. Ji-seong stands too, crossing to where she stands. He doesn't touch her, respects the space she needs, but he meets her eyes with complete vulnerability. I can't promise to be the boy you remember, he says, but I can promise to try being someone better than who I've become. Someone present, someone honest, someone who shows up. That's all I'm asking for. Not perfection, just presence. They stand there by the window, two people separated by inches and decades, and something shifts. Not healing. Healing takes time. Not forgiveness. Forgiveness requires work, but a beginning, a willingness to try. Over the following months, they do try. It's not romantic or cinematic. There are no grand gestures or dramatic moments, just small, consistent actions. Ji-seong visits the pension every Sunday morning, bringing breakfast from the market. They walk through Miryang together, exploring the city like strangers learning familiar territory. They talk about everything: current events, childhood memories, dreams for futures they're no longer sure they'll share. Sometimes the conversations are easy, sometimes they're painful. Sometimes they sit in silence because words aren't enough for what they're navigating. Amara takes a job at a local community center, working with children from difficult backgrounds. Ji-seong watches her come alive in that work, sees the person she became in his absence. Strong, compassionate, whole without him. He starts making changes to his own life, steps back from some business ventures, donates anonymously to the orphanage in Wiseong, learns to say no to obligations that drain rather than fulfill. Slowly, carefully, he begins excavating the person he buried under ambition and fear. 6 months after the gala, on a cool spring evening, They sit together on the steps of Yeongnam-nu Pavilion. The river below reflects cherry blossoms that drift on the current like pink snow. Amara holds out her left hand. On it, 2 rings, the copper band with blue glass, worn, imperfect, carrying 20 years of history, and beside it, a new ring. Simple, also copper, also handmade. Not by a 9-year-old boy, but by a 36-year-old man who spent 3 weeks learning metalworking just to create something with his own hands. "You made this?" she'd asked when he gave it to her. "I wanted to give you something that represented now, not then." She'd cried, then laughed, then slipped it on beside the old one. Now, looking at both rings together, she says quietly, "They don't match." "No," Ji-sung agrees. "They don't. The old one is falling apart. The new one is, well, it's not exactly professional work." "No," he says again. She turns to look at him, and her smile is real. Sad, but real. Neither of them is perfect. Nothing about us is perfect. But they're both here, both existing at the same time. The past and the present, side by side. Ji-sung takes her hand gently, looking at the 2 rings together. "Is that enough?" he asks. 2 imperfect things that don't quite match. Amara leans her head against his shoulder. The same gesture from the photograph, 20 years later, carrying completely different weight. "Sometimes," she says softly, "what survives isn't what was promised. It's what remains after everything else falls away. And if we're lucky, what remains is enough to start again." They sit together as evening falls over Miryang, 2 people who were children together, strangers for decades, now something undefined and fragile and real. Not the love story they imagined, but the one they have. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most honest kind of love there is. Sometimes the most powerful truths are not the ones we uncover, but the ones we spend a lifetime avoiding. This story is not about victory or defeat, but about the quiet spaces in between. It is about the moments when we finally turn around and face the parts of ourselves we abandoned long before anyone else did. What would you have done if the past you tried to forget stood in front of you again, wearing the very symbol of the promise you broke? Would you run, or would you stay? And what about her? A woman who carried a memory across continents, not for recognition, not for justice, but for closure. If you were in her place, would you have stayed to ask for answers, or would you have walked away to protect the pieces of yourself that were still intact? In the end, stories like this remind us that life rarely offers clean resolutions. Sometimes all we receive is a moment of clarity, a fragile truce between who we were and who we choose to be now. And maybe, just maybe, that small truth is enough to move forward.